Hi guys, so today we've got 2019 NABBA Pro Drew Walker on.
Hi guys.
Excellent bodybuilder, so we wanted to get him on, give you advice, let you know how he does things, whether it's different to how other people do things. I know Drew does things a little bit differently to what a lot talk about nowadays. So we wanted to get him on and just see how it is. So how are you doing, Drew?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, mate?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right, thank you very much. So first of all, mate, if we could we just get into sort of how you got started and how you ended up sort of where you are now, how that went through?
I kind of did the classic. My dad showed me movies of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
So it was like my dad's always been into like the whole heroes. Conan, Arnold, all that sort of stuff. So we were watching Predator and Rambo when we were younger, and then naturally, I suppose you kind of aspire to the physique and the masculine stereotype, I suppose. So then that kind of started with training at home a little bit, 14, 15-year-old, press-ups, sit-ups, chin-ups on a door frame, chin-up gym. Got a little set up in a garage, going towards about 14 or 15 years old, and then joined my first gym in year 11 at school, which is about 15 to 16, because it was kind of like the thing to do with all the lads at school. And like I didn't really buy into it at first, because I'm not reclusive, but I was happy training at home. Like a lot of the stuff I learned, it was on the internet, on bodybuilding.com. YouTube wasn't as big then, but there was still information on there. The first gym I actually trained at was Ziggy's Workhouse Gym in Rotherham, which was pure, no nonsense bodybuilding. So that was sort of 15, 16. I trained there for a couple of years, and then ended up at Total Rebuild Gym again in Rotherham, because it was a little bit closer to the college I was at, and I was walking and catching buses at this point, being 16, 17. And that's the first place I saw competitive bodybuilders, really, other than magazines. So I'd started to make half decent progress by that point, and seeing that other bodybuilders were competing, and then naturally local bodybuilders were kind of like, oh, why don't you do a show? Did my first show at 18, and then it just snowballed from there.
Fair enough. So how have things, we'll jump straight into it, how have things changed from sort of when you were training at home in your garage to where you are training now? What's sort of been the changes that you've mostly made?
I suppose it probably sounds a little bit, probably sounds a bit fake, to be honest, which it's not, given the current circumstance. But a lot of the base that I built in the garage is still the same as what I do when I attend the gym anyway. Like, I know you hear stories about people saying, oh, they moved cities or countries to train at a certain gym.
Yeah.
For me, the basics are the basics. If you've got a barbell, if you've got dumbbells, I mean, when it comes to legs and back, there's certain machines that are hard to replicate with free weights, such as leg extensions, leg curls, pull downs. Yeah. But I honestly believe you could build a championship physique with free weights, 100%. Yeah. Which is why, given what's happening at the minute, although you're losing the social atmosphere of a gym, I definitely think you can still push for results if you really want to at this moment in time. Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of free weight basics. I like free weight basics, definitely.
Okay. And are you a sort of a high volume guy, a low volume guy, or do you mix it up?
Traditionally, when I first started, I did the standard 4 sets of 10, 4 sets of 10, 3 sets of 10, 4 exercises, without really thinking too much into it. That was kind of just how a plan would be written down. Like yourself, I'm a big fan of Dorian Yates. Dorian's main principle is like the one working set type principle. For growing, 100% agree with that in terms of you're achieving your goal of failure in the minimal amount of time, preserving calories to recover and grow. It just makes sense, obviously. Like, some people train for 3 or 4 hours. To me, that's just burning calories
Yeah.
And you might achieve the same result, but if you can achieve that result in 1 hour as opposed to 3 hours, then you're going to grow better at that point. Then when you move over to pre-contest, you've got to think about burning calories a little bit more as well. So it can vary then, and you're trying to avoid injury as well. So you might do a few more warm-ups, a little bit more volume. But in terms of building muscle tissue, I would tend to agree that low volume is the way to go.
Yeah.
The only thing that kind of not contradicts, but has made me think a bit more about that lately is when people talk about volume, saying 1 set of 10 is quite a minimalistic way to look at it. Because one of the things that I've focused on for about 2 years now which is what Dorian did used to do, to be fair, controlling negatives and holding squeezes. Now, measuring a set of 10 reps at 100 kilogram, that's all right using that as a gauge for volume. But if you do 10 reps that last a second, or if you do 10 reps that last 4 seconds, you start to enter a different measure of volume then, don't you? Because your tension is higher. So it gets a little bit complicated. But if I was going to reduce it to a simple answer, I would lean towards lower volume for growth. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Do you use intensity techniques ever? Do you do things like rest pauses or anything like that? Or do you stay up and things like that?
I've always loved drop sets.
Right.
I do really like a drop set.
Yeah.
A common the majority of the goals of my session is to reach failure. And I've spent a lot of my career training on my own as well, to be honest. I don't commonly train with a partner. So something like a drop set or a rest pause is ideal to push to failure or beyond failure, especially when you're on your own. But I've always liked superset. I mean, I remember a long time ago I did a YouTube video where I was training at Temple Gym and kind of referred to it as a Dorian style workout.
Okay.
But I were doing drop sets, and someone commented on it and they were like, Dorian wouldn't ever do a drop set. And I were like, they kind of said drop sets were volume, and I were like, well, but again, and this is a common thing, I think a lot of the problems and arguments in bodybuilding and fitness are terminology. It's like, you say 1 set, you might think 1 set is 6 reps and stop. Someone might think 2 drop sets is 1 set, but someone might call that 3 sets. So then your argument is not really, your argument's terminology at that point, isn't it?
So would you use those periodically though, Drew? You wouldn't do that every single session, would you?
Do you know what? I probably do a drop set every session.
Okay.
I'm not really big into the whole deload pulling back type thing. Like if
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, if I'm training to failure to make progress. Again, it's it's just hard really, because if you then require a deload week, have you then just overtrained?
Yes.
If you've trained for 3 hours a day and then you need a deload, should you have just trained for 2 hours a day? Or it's hard. And again, you've got terminology coming into it. But if I felt like I really, really needed a deload or time off, I would probably just have a week off or have an additional rest day. But if I'm training, I'm generally training to failure to make progress. So
well, that's it's a bit like me. If I get to a point of real fatigue, I'll probably take a week off. And most people are like, what are you doing? Why are you not doing something? But sometimes when you've pushed, the best thing you can do is just leave it alone. And let everything get back to normal before you crack on.
Yeah, I remember one particular time when I think I were at college, so I were about 18. We had some form of like Lake District couple of days kind of break planned with college, so I couldn't train when I were there. And from starting training, it was probably the first time I'd ever not trained, because when I were younger, I was just like
all the time.
It were just everything. Like there were no such thing as not They weren't missing a meal, they weren't missing training, whatever. So, and I remember after that 3 or 4 days off, I actually went back in the gym and was stronger.
Yeah.
So again, it's the whole more isn't always better, because you're not necessarily progressing when you're training. You send the signal and then you recover. So the week off, and this is the thing as well. If you view a week off as lazy, should you be viewing the week off as dedicated? Because really, you're dedicated to your ultimate goal of constant progression. So
it's a cumulative fatigue, isn't it? It's building up weeks. So the problem is sometimes is, you know, I've done it myself. I've trained very hard for, say, however many weeks, got really tired and thought, do you know what, let's try this where I'll go in and maybe just train steady, or even doing a steady set that's felt like nothing. I get up next day and I still feel as tired, because it's like it's still done something. Whereas when I took a week off, 5 days or so in, I'm getting that hunger to get back to the gym. You know, things are starting to feel a lot better. And
that's another good one as well, because it's not sensible to think that someone will 100% every single day of their life be ready and raring to train.
No.
So sometimes, for example, like I train 4 days a week at the minute, and that takes discipline because I want to train more. But I find when I do train 4 days, I'm ready for every single session.
Yes.
Whereas sometimes if you do the 6 or the 7, you can get a bit like, I'm supposed to do shoulders today, but I did chest yesterday and I'm a bit sore, or I'm a bit tired, or I didn't sleep that well. Whereas I find, again, this is more geared towards growing as well. The 4 days ensures that the 4 days are 4 quality, productive days. And then again, like we've said, although to a certain extent my goal is failure, I don't think the only thing that leads to progress is failure. For example, because if you were to use that logic, then the only beneficial part of training would be the rep that went to failure, as opposed to the 10 previous reps or the 2 or 3 previous sets. Whereas you'd only have to take 2 minutes reading online to understand that controlling a negative and holding a squeeze has some effect on increasing muscle mass or blood flow or nutrient delivery or whatever. It's not just the failure that leads to progress, although I think it is quite a big factor, because I think anyone that doesn't push to failure, you tend to not see as much progress from that person. Because that's stress.
Physique as well, don't it? I believe as well.
I think so. You
generally. You hit a good point there about the discipline factor, because to be honest, me and George were talking about that the other day. I was saying to him in the sense of that you've got to sit down at some point to understand what your goal is. Yes, you may love to train 6 hours a day, but if that's not benefiting you, are you going to the gym to socialise and have fun, or are you going to the gym to get an end result? And if that means training 3 days a week with maximum effort, then that you have to sit down at some point and say to yourself, well, what am I doing it for?
Yeah, I agree. I think not to revert back to Dorian too much and all the time, although it's not a bad person to refer to because he's 6-time Mr. Olympia. I honestly think Dorian's edge over people was more his discipline. As opposed to the whole. Yeah, I think high intensity is great. I do think it's got some flaws. I mean, look at Dorian now. He had quite a few bad injuries, which have led to him being not perfect now. But I think his discipline, like if Dorian Yates did a 45-minute workout that was optimal, and his mate said to him, "Come on, mate, like what you doing? Do a couple more sets." He'd just go, "No, I've done my job," and it's that level of confidence, and I think. So it's discipline and confidence, and faith in your own process, which is probably harder nowadays because of what we're subject to with social media. If you train for 45 minutes and you do the job optimally, and then you see someone else training for an hour and a half, it's quite natural to think, are they outworking me? But again, it reverts back to more's not always better. if more was better, professional bodybuilders would train for 8 hours a day, chewing on a chicken breast.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you'd train for 8 hours a day. You'd consume 800 grams of protein.
Yeah.
You take unlimited performance enhancing drugs, which is not the case either. So it's the faith and the trust in the process, really.
Well, to be honest, what you just said as well, I mean, going back to the deload thing, I mean, when I spoke to Dorian a couple of times, he said that he could do about 4 to 5 weeks to what he classes his limit.
Yeah.
And he'd have to do a couple of weeks where he just backed things down a lot and he'd take a few extra days off. Then he was ready to go again, you know, for that period. Because like you said, he couldn't be hell for leather week on week on week on week on week. But going to your story there about that you just mentioned, a lot of people don't know that, but with Blood and Guts, when they filmed the back workout for Blood and Guts, you probably know the story, but when he'd finished, the guy went up to him, Kevin Horton, and said, "I'm really sorry, Dorian, but you won't believe this, but the battery ran out. I didn't get the back workout."
Yeah,
so he says, "Can we do it?" And he said, "In a week we can, yeah. Absolutely no chance until then." You know, so that's the point there.
To be honest, like I'm a little bit like that to a certain extent, and it's a bit of a joke that I have, because you get kind of common lifters, accomplished lifters, and they always say, "Oh, we should train together." And then you go, "All right, yeah. So when are you on chest?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm not really on chest when you're on chest." Then you just never train together, because everyone refuses to deviate from their own plan, which in a way is a good thing. Yeah. Like, I mean, I have a plan and I stick to it. Obviously, I've got the gym. I get no end of people coming in and saying like, "Oh, you fancy a bit of legs?" I'm like, no. I'd love to be that guy that'd be like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's do legs for the third time this week." But I've always had my plan. I mean, I think bodybuilding suits me because I'm quite planned and calculated and a bit boring. So I like to.
We spoke before. You're quite a relaxed guy as well, aren't you? Most of the time, you know, you're quite chill. I think that suits this sport. I think the problem, partly through my time, is that I've always been a little bit hyped, and that's never quite done me good, in the sense of if everything wasn't 100% perfect, that would get at me. Whereas it were probably as good as it could be, certainly on that day or whatever. But if it wasn't as good as I thought it should be, that'd eat me alive. And when I spoke to people like Tom Platts, he was very like, "But you've done, the job's done. As long as you give it everything you've got, go home and forget about it and let things happen." And you seem to be a little bit more like that as well.
I think I had a little bit of time, quite similar to you, when I was a bit younger. For example, it's hard because you kind of like draw the line between like dedicated and lazy to a certain extent sometimes. Just one example, like if you've got you say you've got a meal left but you're tired, do you stay up and eat the meal, or do you go to bed?
Are you talking about certainly before I would have probably stayed up and eaten the meal.
Well, would I.
Yeah, which is, on the other hand, though, is that better than getting the extra sleep sometimes? You know, it's questionable, isn't it, really?
You have got that factor as well.
Yeah.
And I think if you say to someone, you have to eat 6,000 calories to grow, so that person is obsessed with staying awake until they've ate 6,000 calories, or do you just have to consume 50 gram of protein every 2.5 hours? So in which case, as long as you've had your protein serving, is it beneficial to stay up for another 2 hours, or do you just go to bed? In my opinion, you probably would benefit from going to bed. But like you said, you had that mentality where you were like, "No, I've got to stay up and have that meal." And I used to do that. I've done that before. I've refused to miss sessions that I should have probably missed. I've missed events that I should have probably gone to. I was worse when I was younger than I am now, a lot worse. Which doesn't mean when it comes time to prep, I can turn it on and
of course,
and pull and make sure that there is some sacrifices that do need to be made. There is some that I potentially don't think need to be made, and there's a time and a place. And
definitely,
I mean, I don't really agree with missing someone's wedding because you refuse to sit around other people that are eating a dinner, but
I agree with you totally, mate. So
it's
some things, it's not making you more disciplined. It becomes ridiculous, really, doesn't it? You know,
yeah,
it's necessary. That's what it is. You know,
absolutely, yeah.
It's crazy. So, just a quick one more on the training, just before we leave that. Do you do anything different in the sense of, because you're well known, obviously, amazing, you know, good all over, but particularly amazing quads, good back.
Yeah.
Do you do repetitions differently, as in not necessarily the speed, but maybe do you do higher reps on legs or anything like that?
Yeah, I think. I would say possibly with legs.
Yeah.
And this is not really for any reason. It's kind of just how I fell into training. My leg reps probably are a little bit higher.
Yeah.
And are a little bit stricter, and I'm actually conforming other stuff with that a little bit now.
Yes.
But that the main reason for that is kind of because if I do leg extensions and I do 6 to 8 reps, it'll just destroy my knees.
Yes.
So for me, and I do believe this with any body part, certain exercises lend themselves to certain reps.
Yes.
I would much rather do a set of 20 squeezes on a leg extension and then do 8 to 10 heavy reps on a squat, as opposed to the other way around. Because so, but in general, I'm not sure whether this is why they're a better body part or whether it's purely genetic, but I probably have done slightly higher reps for legs, mainly to reduce knee pain, but as a byproduct, it seems to have built me a good set of legs. And I mean, touching on genetics a little bit, I did actually always have our leg heavy. I always have, especially quad heavy. So it probably is pretty genetic. I don't think my back was ever a genetically gifted body part, especially for mass. It was always, I always had like a bit of a Christmas tree and stuff. But the mass has seemed to come in over the last couple of years. But again, like my biggest thing with any body part is controlling the negative and holding the contraction. I honestly think, I don't like to overemphasize anything really, but I do think that is the key to training, because otherwise you're using momentum at best and quite a small time of momentum. Like using the time analogy again. A lot of people are in a rush. They get a bar off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you timed the actual tension of a muscle, it's not a lot. It's quick. Whereas if you relax and you control it, hold the squeeze, hold the squeeze. It doesn't mean if you can normally do 140 kilo on a bench, it doesn't mean do 60. But what it means is 120 for 30 seconds will probably be more beneficial than 140 for 10 seconds. I mean, if you worked that out mathematically, if that was how it worked, that would obviously be more muscle tension. Because you're just handling weight for a longer period. So And again, that's the whole ego thing. A lot of people.
We'll bring up right quick the progressive overload thing, because I know we have chats. So it's like, what's your? I mean, I know what your take is, but what's your take? Because I've discussed this with the other guys, and they've all pretty much come back with a similar answer as to what we've spoke about. In that, it's an important factor that you get stronger over time, but it's not the absolute be all and end all. That if you don't get an extra rep on a set, that the workout was a waste, which is how a lot of people view it nowadays. You know?
Yeah, I mean, some people like may or may not know the disagreement that I had with someone about it like recently. And my original point was not directed at anyone. It was just an observation of my opinion. And like for me personally, I was stronger when I was 20, but I wasn't bigger. So that's point A or one. I've seen powerlifters gain considerable amounts of strength with next to no muscle tissue. You could look at technique and repetition, whatever, but the be all and end all is they've gained strength without muscle tissue. And I've seen people gain strength and muscle, and I do try and get my clients to get stronger.
Yes.
But it's not the main focus. It's not the be all and end all.
At the expense of anything else.
Yeah. So there's much more to training than, and like I mentioned earlier, I think analysing your training in terms of I did 100 kilogram for 10 reps is a very minimalistic way of looking at it.
Yeah.
When you start looking into controlling negatives, holding contractions, pre-exhaust. I mean, I quite like pre-exhaust to a certain extent.
That's great.
The problem with pre-exhausting is that makes progressive overload even harder to monitor, because how do you monitor the amount of pre-exhaust that you did?
Well, I mean, the reason I do use pre-exhaust, and I've used pre-exhaust, and I know you've got a copy in my book, and I mentioned bits and bobs. The only downside I ever found to pre-exhaust, and this is not to have a go at it, but you tended to find sometimes that the movements that you may class as, I don't want to say more dangerous, but if you're doing a dumbbell fly as a starting movement to go onto a bench press, you tend to find that your strength increase becomes quite dramatic on the dumbbell fly. Before you go into the bench press, and then you start to think, then how much more can I go here, even with form, before something's going to rip off, and so you have to think things sometimes,
Yeah, I know what you mean with that. And what the way I generally work around that is my pre-exhaust set would be like 20 really strict squeezes and slow negatives, to the point where you're still going to failure as well. I think that's the other thing that people misconstrue. Just because you go lighter doesn't mean you don't still go to failure.
Absolutely.
It's like people think you either do 6 lunatic reps to failure or you do 100 soft reps, like pumping. It's not like that. To refer back to another couple of like really good British bodybuilders, and like one of my favourites is Lee Powell as well, who I know probably gets quite a bit of influence from Dorian to a certain extent, and John Hodgson. I think you've had John on the podcast.
Yeah.
I always remember seeing them saying, "Oh, we did 3 and 4 plate squats for 20 reps." Like that is hard. That is harder than 6 reps. And I see 6 reps as like mechanical failure. You fail to the point where it's like, and I think this as well. I don't think your muscles hurt that much when you fail at 6 in terms of pain. But if you do a set where 15's about your fail and you're grinding another 5 out, whether you've got a spotter or you do a rest pause or you take a breath, they are hard sets.
Well, I've always thought, I mean, I've been a 6 to 8 man. You know what I mean? I've done that a lot, but a couple of points to that. One, you just made a great point. A lot of the time, even with maximal effort, mentally and physically, I felt I was failing against the weight. Whereas sometimes when I'm doing, say, a 12, 15 rep set, I feel like I'm able to squeeze through them points until the muscle just won't function anymore.
I agree.
Which really makes a big difference. And then no matter how strict my form was, and I mean super slow, whatever I did, I found over time of 6 to 8, I would always pick up niggles. When people say if your form's 100%, you'll always be okay. When your strength starts to get more and more and more, but when I'm doing 12 to 15s, it becomes more of a rarity. I get a niggle or...
See, this...
You're taking it off. The problem is, like you've just been talking about, the quick repetitions and there's no thought. You're moving a hell of a lot of that weight, whatever you want to call it, onto the skeletal system and the ligament and tendon, where when you're controlling it, you're trying to get it on the muscle and off those areas as much as possible.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then it's like if 6 achieves failure and 15 achieves failure, they both achieve the same result, but 15 reduces the chance of injury, then I'm not... Again, I don't say anything is wrong or right. Anyone can do whatever they want, and that's fine. And again, it were ironic when I had that disagreement with someone. That person said people should be allowed to train how they want, and I was like, they should. So stop commenting on other people's things. Like, let people... Anyone can train how they want. I don't really mind. Obviously, unless they're a client and they've come to me and then they're asking you how they want to train. But anyone's entitled to do what they want. But I'll tell you
a little point. Sorry to break you off. And I wanted to bring this up on one of the other podcasts. And I don't know if you've ever heard of a bodybuilder. If you haven't, look him up when we've done. It's called Scott Wilson. he's a bodybuilder from quite a long time ago, and he trained in a high intensity manner for long periods of time. And he's still classed to this day of having some of the best deltoids there's ever been. You know, side cap of a deltoid. If you see him, it's mental, the width of him.
Yeah.
And when I was in America, I watched him do a workout because I stopped in America quite a bit when I was younger, and I actually had the privilege of seeing him in a gym training. And I'd read that he did this, and even as when I was younger, I used to think, wow, really? And he actually did it in the gym. And he used 2.5 kilo dumbbells for side laterals. But the form was ridiculous. You know, it was like, it probably took him a minimum of 6 seconds to raise the weight. He then held it at the top for probably a minimum of 3 seconds. And then as he came down, he paused in 3 different points all the way down to the bottom. And by the end of the set, he was absolutely screaming. And his shoulders looked like they were going to explode. Do you know what I mean? They were purple. And you could not watch that and think, oh, that's a load of bollocks, it's not going to do anything, so you ain't got no weight.
Well, it makes perfect sense, really. And I have had the comment before, you've got big shoulders, but you don't lift a lot of weight. Which my response is, well, what do you think to that? And again, it's like you talk about rep ranges. The rep range for a side lateral should be very different to the rep range for a shoulder press. You could argue they both do a bit of front delt, they both do a bit of side delt. But if you look at a side lateral mechanically, it's so easy to just turn that movement into pure momentum.
Well, it's probably the worst exercise in a gym, virtually.
And again, how many, and I see a lot of people, they do the kind of laying down cuff side laterals. But in my opinion, if you just hold a side lateral at the top and control a negative, you turn it into a strict exercise anyway. Like the laying down and the cuff's not particularly necessary if you perform the exercise strict anyway. But and sometimes I'll do a pyramid set for side laterals where I'll do 5, 10, 15, 20, 10 reps on each, up and down. I probably won't ever do that for bench press, but for a side lateral, it lends itself to that. It seems to work really well. But I mean, holding the squeeze again. For me, that is the key to training to a certain extent. Transforms nearly any exercise, even if your form's immaculate.
What's your take on the sort of recovery thing, Drew? Because super popular now. I disagree with it, so I'll put it out there. I get a lot of shit for that, but I'm not bothered. I'll say that because whether it's because I don't take drugs, and as you know me, I've helped people get ready for shows that take drugs, and I've nothing against that because 100% I know the efforts, everything's still there. That's everybody's opinion. But I cannot, I said to George, the other day, we filmed me doing sissy squat because we've done it once and we've done it again. And I threw some negatives on the end this time. And I literally just did the sissy squat. I went home, I felt ill all day. Typical, and no word of a lie, I was due to do them again on Monday, and they were still hurting on Sunday, and I did them on the Monday, and I did one set. So I can't do a body part 2-3 times a week like people are recommending now because I'm in pieces. I can't do that. So I wondered what your take. Do you train everything once a week? Do you? How do you sort of? Because when Tom Platts came, I think the biggest shock to people that day was the fact I asked him about how he trained his legs. Now, Tom used to change heavyweight low reps, the heaviest weight he could do for high reps, but he actually, which I think what we've just touched on, shocked most people. If he had the choice, he'd always go for higher repetitions because he felt that was a way better choice on any body part.
I was just going to mention that actually. Just tight his legs. But what people didn't realise was he trained his legs twice a month. I didn't realise that. People don't know that. And that because what he said was, he says people watched him train, thought he was a lunatic, but didn't realise he still had the mental capacity to go, do you know what? I need a shed load of time off now to let what I've done take place. And he said he couldn't do them more than twice a month, giving it everything he'd got. I don't think anything should be trained more than once a week.
No, Yeah.
I've maybe had times where I've tried it and immediately, and seen no additional progress. And I just think logically, scientifically, increasing strength, recovering, from every which way, I don't see how that would be beneficial to train something more. Again, it relates back to the more is not always better principle. I think some of it comes from coaches that are selling people pipe dreams like, I can't get bigger arms. Oh, come and do arms 3 times a week. Before you've figured out that it don't work, you've paid a coach 100 quid. Like, it's just stupid.
My point of it is, which I've mentioned on the podcast before, but I know you've got a copy of my book, and I put in there about that what people don't, from my point of view, don't understand. A larger body takes more out of you to recover than it did before. Your recovery ability only improves so much. Because my point to that is what we've just spoke about. If you're hitting a 6-week point and you felt on top at Worlds for 4 weeks, but suddenly now your last week or two you feel like crap, that's not because you're not doing enough. That's because that's become too much. That's how people don't get that, And if George now started out with a 15-inch arm, but they grow to 20, you're not telling me that the 20-inch arm is recovering better than the 15-inch one was, because the demand on systemically is so much greater. Calories are more. So to me, the more rest, the better, really, to make sure you're recovering.
And people that tend to train things more than once a week, they almost contradict themselves as well, because they end up altering the emphasis of the second workout. So it's almost like they're admitting that they can't train it again. Like people do legs twice, and one's a glute ham emphasis. One's a quad emphasis. Whereas your quads and your hamstrings are antagonistic, so it's almost impossible, other than like a leg extension and a leg curl. You can isolate each individual one, but you show me someone that can do a leg press without working quads, hams, and glutes, and it's just
calves to some degree when you really push yourself. I think that's the other point. People think that when we train something, even if you just train biceps, but you're giving it, particularly when you're giving it everything you've got, like yourself, it isn't just the bicep that's working.
Oh no!
Because the nervous system's taking a kick in everything. So people don't think about that, and our bodies don't work, unfortunately, in a manner of, let's forget about everything else. Let's just make sure these biceps grow. They'll take care of every other process first before they even consider adding a bit of muscle to the biceps.
Yeah, definitely.
People don't think about that. That's the thing.
I just think it's a more isn't better principle again. You're not going to grow more by training more. I've seen it a million times. Someone with bad legs does it twice a week, and it makes them even worse. Because as well, the other thing I think is, generally a body part that is weak is normally just genetically not as gifted, which is a harsh reality. What that normally means as well is it doesn't recover as well. So,
absolutely.
Training it more is even worse. It's almost like you're not giving it a chance, like you're just battering it twice a week.
Well, do you know what? Again, sorry, I'm bringing all these references up, but again, when I was in the States, I had the great thing to meet Mike Menzer, and we were talking about a guy that he were training, and this guy, he really had a good physique, but he had poor calves, which a lot of people do.
Yeah, it can be genetic.
Tried everything, and Menzer had even obliterated him on calves on a regular basis, and they'd improved, but not as much. So Mike just had the idea. He says, right, I tell you what we're going to do now is we're going to train your calves half the amount of time that we train everything else. And this guy was like, you've got to be kidding, haven't you? and he did. And he said, suddenly, 4 or 5 weeks down the line, these calves started growing better. And his strength were going up on a more regular basis, and again, that just proved that it needed more recovery, basically, to be able to allow the growth to take place before he trained it again.
It makes sense. It makes more sense than battering it into the ground 3 times a week.
So what do you do? Cardio, Drew? What's cardio? Do you do any off season? How much do you do for contests?
I'm a little bit people probably don't really like my views on cardio because they're so like old fashioned. It's ridiculous. Like I don't do that much in the off season because it's potentially just using calories that you would use to be in a surplus or recover. I understand the benefits to your heart of doing a bit of cardio, but what I'll generally do is I like doing a bit of like boxing pads and stuff, a bit more fitnessy as opposed to like walking on a treadmill.
And something you enjoy.
Yeah, so it's you kind of like getting a heart health benefit, and it's a bit enjoyable. But it probably still burns calories that you would be generally using to grow. So you've got to think about your goals at that point. Like we mentioned earlier, discipline. Sometimes it's more discipline to not do any cardio. You want that surplus. You want to grow.
Yeah.
In terms of pre-contest, I like to start it early. Something I learned in the last couple of years is early on, I used to kind of go with the whole don't do too much too soon because you want to keep a card to play. I don't really agree with that anymore. Like the whole, what if your body gets to a sticking point? There's no such thing as a sticking point. No. Like it's an equation. It's an equation that if your maintenance is X and your intake is X and your expenditure is X, you will lose. There's none of this, my body refused to lose weight because I played my cards too early. So But I like morning cardio. I like steady cardio. I know people do the calorie counting thing where they say it makes no difference where you do your cardio. For me, and a good saying is the best cardio or the best training or the best diet is not always the best one. It's the one you'll stick to. So I like to get up in the morning. I walk a certain amount of time and then walk back. So I'll walk in one direction for 30 minutes and then walk back for 30 minutes. So
absolutely.
Quite brisk, not overly brisk, because I mean, if you wanted to go a bit more into it, and the reason they did this in college when I first started sports at college, energy systems. Keeping your heart rate at 60% for a longer period of time, your body will choose to use fat over carbohydrate. Whether that overrides the calorie equation, I'm not sure. In my experience, low intensity cardio for longer periods of time works better.
And plus, you're not taxing your system again as much, are you?
Well, this is the other thing.
It's the weight workouts. Which makes sense to me.
I tried high intensity intervals and sprints on cross trainers and stuff, and if you looked at it from the point of view of having glycogen stores in your muscle that you wanted for training, if you're sprinting on a cross trainer every single day, chances are you'll probably deplete some glycogen. So again, there is people that would probably love to disprove this point, but for me, low intensity steady state cardio is more likely to burn fat and preserve muscle.
Well, it's scientific studies, Drew, isn't it? And I don't bang on to them very much, me.
Well, everyone's got a study.
I don't really believe in it too much.
I don't want to be that guy that's like, science is wrong. But as well, how many variables are controlled in scientific studies? And then you talk about subject A didn't lose weight off steady state cardio, but subject B lost weight off high intensity cardio. What if one of them, how do you know they ate the same? How do you know they were the same body weight? How do you know they had the same genetics? Like, I'm not trying to disprove every scientific study that's ever been made, but a lot of my knowledge is just experience. I've done it. I've done high intensity intervals. I've done low intensity steady state. I've done it in the morning. I've done it at night. I've done it after I train. I prefer it away from training. And I prefer it. I like to do cardio in the morning or cardio at night away from my training.
Well, I mean, they say now, don't they, that fasted cardio now makes no difference whatsoever. But I mean, back in if we want to do what we've been doing and going back to '90s, the guys were ever back then, and they all did fasted cardio.
I know.
So there's got to be a point to something, hasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's quite a hard one. The whole. Were they bigger in the 80s, 90s? Were they leaner in the 80s and 90s? It's hard to say. Cameras are different. Like,
absolutely, I agree.
You've got water retention, body fat, muscle mass, genetics. Like, I mean, it's all right saying, was this person better than that person? Some people are just anomalies. Like Ronnie Coleman is an anomaly. He's the most unique 1 in a billion people you'll ever see in your life. Like, And then the problem you've got then is if what he says goes, whether it's right or not, because it's like you've got to train heavy because Ronnie trained heavy. Like, I think Ronnie would have been Ronnie if he didn't train heavy. Great
work ethic and things as well, and it makes I agree with you. What you just said then with the cardio. You know, if I help people get ready for shows, you know, we keep everything to as minimum as we can with, so we've got somewhere to go. But as far as not, when I say pushing the cardio, I'm like you, I believe in steady state, but I like them to do it from the beginning for the simple fact that when I did shows before, certainly initially, I probably made the mistake, as a lot of people do, where they'll do more towards the end. Where a lot of the time by the end, you're absolutely knackered. You'd have been better doing more at the beginning when calories are still a little bit higher and things, and then being able to reduce down towards the end makes more sense sometimes.
I did that. The majority of my preps, and to be fair, a lot of them were when I were getting help by other people. They weren't when I were doing my own. I was playing catch up at the end. So it's all right saying, don't play all your cards too early. You've got to play them. So the last prep, well, the best prep I've ever done was obviously the 2019 prep for Worlds. Started at 30 minutes cardio, probably 16 weeks out, and for that reason, never really went any higher. And by the time I was 4 weeks out, I had striated glutes that I'd never had before. At which point you're on almost cruise control because you're there. All you've got to do is just carry on instead of. And to be honest, between the Northeast and the Britain and the Worlds, because I went a bit mad, I started doing more cardio, and I don't think I really got that much from it. Like I probably just, like we've mentioned, I probably just flattened out a little bit, and I probably started picking cardio over sleep, which I'm not saying you should pick sleep over cardio, because again, it starts to sound lazy, but if you've done an hour cardio for that day, then you're better off just getting to bed. If you're not getting lean, you probably need to cut your calories down a little bit.
I totally agree, mate. Totally agree. It don't. I don't know. A lot of people do things in funny ways, don't they? Say they play catch up at the end, and
I've done it loads of times.
Cardio 2 or 3 weeks out if you've already got there.
That'd be ideal
as well. You know, so. Yeah, most definitely. So, what's your eating plan, Drew? How do you eat? How do you work things out?
To be honest, my main emphasis, and I've gone back to this a little bit more recently. My main emphasis is protein. I want to have like a good serving of protein every 2.5 hours ish. I like essential amino acids. I like whey protein. I'm 50-50 on the whole food versus supplement argument because for me, I have what most people would probably consider as free whole food meals and free whey protein meals. The whey protein meals that I have do also have like a piece of fruit, peanut butter, and oats. So you could argue that the only supplement is the protein source. The rest is still food technically, but for me, I can't. I find it hard to eat chicken 4 times a day. I used to do it, like we've mentioned before. I thought that were it. Like I used to eat lunch boxes of chicken and pasta till with no sauce and salt on them, like a lunatic. I've done all them things. I've done it that way, and I've done it the easier way. And to be honest, like I keep mentioning, I had the best results I've ever had recently with a little bit more common sense, really, and not as much absolute bodybuilding lunacy. Cause
I think people think there's a secret, don't they? But I think a lot of the time when people turn up on a stage more ripped, they've probably just done what they were doing for a little bit longer rather than the secret. You know, that's usually you know.
Time's a factor. I say this to a lot of people. You've got genetics, you've got the ability to work hard, and your only other variables to that really is time. Obviously consistency, but that kind of relates to ability to work hard and consistent. There is absolutely no secrets. Bodybuilding's very, very simple. The 3 meals that I eat, one's an egg meal, one's a chicken meal, one's a steak or a salmon meal.
Are you trying to hit a protein number, Drew, for the day, or?
I shoot for about 300.
Okay.
300 grams, which at a lean body mass of about 210, you're looking at 1.5.
Yeah.
Which I think is moderate.
Okay.
Potentially a little bit high. I did have it a bit lower for a while because, as well, one of the reasons I think I used to struggle to get in shape was just that my protein was too high, which I kind of had the opinion that if I eat chicken and broccoli, I've got to get shredded. But if you eat too much protein, it's still calories at the end of the day. So you can you can still struggle to get in shape off that. So I tried a little bit lower protein, and I think when you start looking at digestion and health and stuff, it probably is better to not have a super excessive amount of protein. But 1.5 seems to be like a good spot for a bodybuilder.
What about your carbs and fats? Because what I tend to, people to me at the moment, I know you've just mentioned that, and I've nothing against that, but a lot of people now are obsessed with adding fats. You know, let's add jars of peanut butter and but for me, what I tend to do is I tend to have a red meat meal and whole eggs pretty much every day. So I know my fats are pretty much getting taken care of with, which allows me then to nibble a little bit more on carbohydrates as well, because I'm not adding any fats to the meals as well, you know.
It's definitely a trending, isn't it, fats? Because people just like peanut butter. I think it's as simple as that, really. I've done that. I think it's a decent tool for growing because it's calorie dense. You're looking at 9 calories per gram of fat versus 4 for protein and carbs. So it's a pretty decent way of bumping your calories up if you need that. I think. I mean, Dorian's rule used to be like 30% fats to his protein, didn't it? Which would put me at 100 gram. I probably do a bit less than that.
But again, his one that were from red meat and eggs. You didn't really see him add any fats at any point.
Exactly. I've had times where I have had times where I've added peanut butter, and I do sometimes think, and it's such a bodybuilder thing to think, but I think Dorian and Jay never had peanut butter. And I know that it's potentially a bit naive because food is food. Like, I know some people don't like the whole good food, bad food thing because food is food, calories are calories. But
that's what
I have whole eggs. I like red meat. I do like salmon. I might have peanut butter once a day. But I think people have took it a little bit too far, and that would carbs.
Carbohydrates.
At the minute, I don't put as much of an emphasis on carbs as I think some people do. I think people have up to too many. I think I would estimate. I'm not overly meticulous with counting as well. Like I probably, because I've got to the point where I can pretty much eyeball what I need. But I think if you were to have 50 gram of carb, 6 servings a day, 300 gram of carb, level with protein, fats at 50 to 75, you'd probably be looking at 2,500 to 3,000 calories. I think that's probably enough for most people to grow. The whole thought process that you need 1,000 carbs, 6,000 calories, in my opinion, these are the people that then end up doing a recomp. It's like, if you've intentionally been in that much of a surplus that you've got fat to the point where you need a recomp, you've made an error, because fat storage is a waste product at the end of the day, or an excess. So in my opinion, you don't need that many calories. I mean, again, not to revert back to Dorian all the time, but I don't think Dorian's off seasons were much higher than 5,000 to 6,000.
I think he averaged, about 5,500 max. And he said he could have eaten more than that, but he said he didn't need to eat more than that. You know?
Exactly. And again, this comes back to discipline. He had the faith and the discipline to eat 5,500 and leave it. And trust that would yield optimal muscle gains without getting fat and having to recomp. So I think 300, 350 is probably a good starting point. Everyone's different. So you put someone on that after 2 weeks. How's it going? Yeah, I'm getting a bit stronger. I've put a bit of muscle on. I've not put any fat on. Excellent. Keep doing it. I normally structure people 1 or 2 off-plan meals in that. So you could argue that 3,000 calories, if you have 2 off-plan meals, turns more to 4.
Yeah.
If you averaged it out, which is how that's kind of how I like to do it.
That's exactly how I do it to people. I think people need that mental break as much as anything else, because it's about sustainability as well.
Yeah, I prefer a lower base diet with a couple of off-plan meals than a higher base, because for me, a higher base guarantees you will get fat.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I do that for myself.
Is the first thing you do pre-contest? Do you leave your proteins and fats where they are and start lowering the carbohydrates? How do you?
I mean, the first thing I'd do is, like we've just mentioned, the refeed or the off plan. I actually still do one a week, even when I diet. All the way through.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a controversial topic. And I think, again, it comes down to discipline and terminology and how you view things, because I don't view a structured refeed or a cheat meal. I don't really think it matters what you call it, but I don't view it as a negative. I view it as a tool.
Yeah.
Some people are like, I'm a little bit old school. I like old school guys, but they sometimes say, oh, the first thing people ask me is, are they allowed to cheat?
Yeah.
I think most bodybuilders did have a refeed.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, I'm not 100% sure about Dorian, but I know we sometimes get this stigma that they were super strict, more strict than what we are now.
He told the story when he was here, saying one of his Olympias 10 days out, they saw him in somewhere eating ice cream, and they were like, "What the hell?" You know what I mean? But so it didn't matter. You know, he just balanced it off and carried on.
And my analogy to that is, if you have 50 meals a week, one will not undo it.
No,
absolutely not. If one meal does undo it, then there's something wrong for the other. Yeah. So, and then if you look at like more scientific things, they say like is it leptin reduces when you diet, so that kind of brings that back. So again, it's a tool. But yeah, like I know I spent about 5 years thinking that Gary Lister was like the strictest man alive. Like he ate chicken and sweet potato 6 times a day, and then I was talking to him once, and he were like, "Yeah, I have a Chinese on a Saturday when I'm dieting." And I was like, "What?" Because I've done preps with no refeeds. I've done 4 months with no cheat meal, no refeed. I can do it. I have done it. Like I say, a lot of the things that I promote and that I do, they're experience based. It's from I've done nearly everything you can do after 10 years now.
So would you, like I sort of do, do you tend to sort of lower carbohydrates and then more towards the end, so you've still got some carbs in, you tend to bring the fats down possibly a little bit then?
Yeah, fats would probably become a lower priority. Again, not to refer to Dorian all the time, but I know he says he tried diets with no fats and like it wasn't good for like his hair and nails. Which
he ate no carbs as well. He never went lower than about $100 on carbs.
Again, but I've done that. I've done no carb. I've done keto. I've done high fat. I've done no fat. I've done high protein, low protein. For me, it comes back to there is no secrets, and a balance is the best. And as well, like I've just mentioned, the 300, 350, and then 2 refeeds. I honestly think if you reduce the refeed to 1, added 30 to 45 minutes cardio a day, maybe you train a little bit more. You don't have the snacks that you normally have.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would be surprised. That would be enough to get them ready.
Yeah.
As long as you do it. If you did it for 16 weeks, like I mentioned, the 2019 prep I did, I was ready 4 weeks out. It were pretty easy. It were carbs every meal. Didn't do too much cardio. Like I would probably doing 200 to 300 gram of carb. Even towards the end of prep, when I were ready and I were on say 200 gram, I still felt full. I still trained and like visibly blew up. I never got the flat. Like I don't.
The problem is people lower things so much, and then the workouts suffer so much. It's the balance. Your physique can go to cost. Your workouts are completely terrible. You know, so it's finding the balance.
It is a balance thing, because it's like you've got to put something in to give something back.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean you have to eat 600 gram of carb, but it does mean if you eat 250 instead of 50, if you eat 50, you probably can't even perform.
Yeah.
So again, it's a balance.
As you know, the problem sometimes is when carbohydrates are so low, your body's just going to convert the protein then if it requires it. So the protein's not available then, you know. So you know, you've got to get that balance correct.
Yeah, that's my opinion on protein and carbs. Again, referring back to when I was younger and I ate too much protein. Eating too much protein will then potentially convert to glycogen anyway, which is an expensive and probably not productive process of just eating carbs in first place.
Absolutely, mate.
For example, if you refer it back to calories, 400 protein and 100 carb is the same as, is it 500? So 250 calorie wise.
Yeah.
But your body will probably handle 250 carb, 250 protein better than it would 400 protein, 100 carb.
Definitely.
You're not even increasing calories. So it would you hear stories where people are like, oh, he added carbs and I lost weight. How does that make any sense? And it's like, well, it can do.
I just wanted to ask you this because I've asked everybody else because I know it's a topic very few talk about, and I just wanted to bring that in. Your last week of prep, what do you do? Because you hear so many. You hear I drunk 20 litres of water a day, nearly drowned, and
Yeah.
Do you? I mean, I'm assuming you probably drink. I don't know. Do you drink sort of 3 or 4 litres of water a day normally, anyway, or something like that?
I think 4 is a good point.
Do you sort of increase the water over the last week? Do you sodium load? Do you carb deplete? Things like that. How do you sort of handle the last week?
I would like to use this as an opportunity to wholeheartedly say that peak week is the biggest load of bollocks I've ever even encountered. I mean, if I said to you, tell me how many people you've ever heard say, I looked better 1 week out.
Oh, yeah, 99%.
Exactly. Yeah. Tell me how many people have said to you, I looked shit 1 week out and I saved it with a peak week.
Yeah.
Never.
Well, yeah.
Never. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then even if you still want to look into it after that, which makes me think you're a bit daft.
Yeah.
What you're doing is, I mean, if I jotted a few variables down now that people mess with on peak week, water, carbs, sodium, potassium, training, cardio, diuretics, performance-enhancing drugs, anti-conversion drugs, whatever.
Yeah.
Even that's 9.
Yeah.
And what they then do is most of them contradict each other.
Yeah.
So how would any logical person come up with a logical method involving all those variables? It's just it is so absurd. I don't know why it's ever come to the level that it's at.
Again,
I mean,
I think it's the so-called gurus in it wanting to look like experts. I think it's a sales thing, like most coaching is. I've got this protocol. This is where you went wrong. I saw you last year and you did this, blah, blah, blah. But I know Dorian did a bit of a peak, and even Dorian, for someone so methodical and simplistic, I think his was potentially a little bit excessive, although his was one of the best I've seen. For example, I mean, I've read a bit about his, and it were kind of, if at the end of the prep you're on 300 carb, you might half it to 150 for a few days as a deplete, and then and then your first day you might do 600, then back down to 450, back down to 300, and then there's your show. That's not a bad way. And the water thing, he used to increase the water as most do, and did a little bit, maybe a couple of litres or something up until last day, and he used to stop the drinking water the night before.
Yeah, I know a lot of people do that, and if I cut water, I go soft. I don't know why. I've literally had this conversation with coaches that I've had in the past and said, look, I really don't want to cut my water. Like, honestly, I don't want to do it. And they're like, no, cut your water. There's no reason why it don't work. And it doesn't work for me. I've done it before. Again, a lot of the things I do, it's because I've done 21.
Well, some people, everybody releases aldactone at different levels, don't they? Maybe you release it very, very quickly.
Again, everyone could be different. And then, again, it's like, why mess? Like, for me, the more important variable, the more important variables are muscle mass. You build that in the off season. The other variable is body fat. You get that off.
Yeah.
The other variable that comes into play as a byproduct of getting body fat off is flatness. That just requires a little bit of filling up.
Yeah.
And again,
what do you eat on the day, Drew?
On the day, just my regular diet. I mean,
just the same.
As if it were. This is the best way I can say to someone to approach the day of the show.
Yeah.
Treat it like you go in there to train.
Yeah.
And like, I think there's no evidence behind this, but I would imagine the way a muscle is displayed well is also the way it would perform well.
Yeah.
You wouldn't train on no water, no salt, diuretics. You just wouldn't. So for me, a muscle, it's logical that a muscle would look well the way it would perform well as well.
Yeah. You do anything backstage, any tricks backstage, or nothing at all? Any wine the night before, or things like that?
I think the wine the night before is a little bit of a myth. The best shows I've ever done are shows where someone has rang me or messaged me a day or two before and said, "Do you want to come and do the show at weekend?" And I just go like I'm going to train, and I look better. Like I think people just mess with too many variables for it to be a sensible thing to do. Like I said, for me, it's just fullness. And again, there's a gent called Chris Jones who owns a coaching company called All On Off Nutrition. He's a very bright bloke. He talks about fluid balance. Your body will balance fluid itself.
All it's ever trying to do is homeostasis is all it wants.
Exactly, yeah. It's homeostasis. So thinking that you can pull it out from under your skin, put it in your muscle, blah blah blah. It's pretty. There's not much chance of doing it. And then again, you get the contradicting variables where someone's trying to carb up on 1,000 grams of carb, but they don't want to ingest sodium or water. So that's a contradicting goal.
Yeah.
Then they say they can't fill up, but they take a diuretic, and it's like, well, what do you expect? Like, for me, you build the muscle in the off season, you get the fat off pre-contest.
Yeah.
I think it works quite well. And one of the things I do, like I say, I have a cheat meal once a week. That's quite a good trial the day after a cheat. I used to do mine on a Friday night, and I'd go and train on a Saturday and say, would I be happy if I looked like that?
Yeah.
And every Saturday for the last 4 weeks, it was 100%.
Right, okay.
So to me, that's a. Pardon?
Have you ever used diuretics, Drew?
I have done. Yeah, I had coaches in past that were quite big on using them. Never had a good experience with them. I ended up with stomach cramps more often than not. But again, that cutting water, diuretics, cutting sodium, that doesn't seem to be what displays me in my best way. And again, what it all comes down to for me is the most common term in bodybuilding is I look better 1 week out. And it's a shame as well because
3 days later.
And again, it's for the same reasons. The salt's gone back in, the water's gone back in, the diuretics come out, they look excellent again. And it's a shame because I see so many people, even top pros, even people in the Olympia, and I see them getting ready, and I'm like, they look good, but I know what they're going to do. They're going to ruin it. They all do it. And I know it sounds like such a ludicrous thing to say, but I honestly think some people that are not top coaches and pros could help pros be better pros. I know that sounds terrible, but it's just. It's like a lot of it's just smoke and mirrors and sales and promotion, and I would imagine a lot of people don't even listen to the coaches. They've just gone with them because they want the following that they've got, or they think it's going to get them a placing because they know this judge or that organizer. Do
you use many supplements, Drew, or do you just stick to basics? Like you said, you're weighing your essential aminos and things.
Yeah, I really like essential aminos. I used to like BCAAs, but they kind of came out, didn't they, a couple of years ago, saying you need the full. You need the full essential amino acids as opposed to the branched chain, which is fine. I have essentials. I've gone back to having them in the morning as well. As soon as I get up, essential amino acid, and I've had it intra pretty much my entire bodybuilding career. Quite like that. like I say, I use whey protein as a meal replacement, so that's quite a big staple.
What do you have in the intro?
I like the essential amino acid,
Okay.
and normally citrulline, malate, and creatine.
Okay.
Citrulline's pump. I think a lot of products put too much stuff in. Obviously, I'm with Chemical Warfare, so I use their products a lot because that's kind of like an all-in-one pre-mixed product. Yeah. Kirk, that owns Chemicals, pretty much second to none with making products and the ingredients. But as a base, essential amino acid, citrulline, and creatine is what I would. Pardon?
You use a multivitamin and mineral, or
I do, yeah. I do a multivitamin every day, and I do vitamin D every day as well, which is funny because I kind of started that because I don't know whether you know Stan Efferding, the bodybuilding coach from America. Yeah, he does the vertical diet. I think he's quite a bright bloke. I like a lot of stuff that Stan does. One of the things he says is that is vitamin D, because even in America, people don't get enough vitamin D or sun.
We certainly don't in this country.
Well, and given the current circumstances, it's very beneficial now. I mean, I did see a video where one doctor went on record and said what people need to do is 10,000 IU of vitamin D a day. Yeah. That's something that I've done for probably about 2 years now. Right. I do think it's beneficial.
I've used it quite a long time. The only problem for me with vitamin D is if I go up to like the dosages you're talking about there, I just end up with a bad stomach. I have to work up to a sort of a cut-off point, and I know if I go any more than that, I take stomach issues. So I kind of just work my way to that point, and I know where I can go. So
I think when I first watched that Stan Efferding vertical diet video, I think he says about 10. The tablets I've got at the minute, I think the 5,000, and I probably have one a day. So I probably do 5,000 a day. Again, like anything, more there's always a limit. More's not always better type thing.
If we could do the final thing, could we? Sorry, have we covered your supplements there, or was there something else?
No, I don't really bother with glutamine because I think there's potentially enough in whey protein. Which you could argue that with amino acids, to be fair, that the profile, as long as your protein intake's high enough. I like a carb powder every now and again as well. Either intra or post or both.
What do you use for that, like a clustered dextrin or something, or?
I'm not overly sold on whether the benefit of, say, clustered dextrin over maltodextrin is worth the financial difference.
No, I know.
If you know what I mean. Yeah, like, I suppose, I think that's marketing. I think it's
probably worth it if you tend to be a person that bloats a lot from maltodextrin. But other than that, I think if your stomach's okay with it, probably buy the maltodextrin because it's a lot cheaper.
That's what I do at the minute. I buy clustered dextrin every now and again, and especially if a company does one that's a nice flavour, it's sometimes quite nice to have like a nice flavoured intra. But if you were talking about pure results over anything, then I'd probably go with the cheaper maltodextrin.
Okay, mate. Well, listen, we'll let you go, but just one last question we have to cover it, mate. It's just a drug thing.
Yeah.
Because from my point of view now, and I'm sure you're in the same boat, it's kind of got out of hand, a lot of it now. So I just want your take on that do you use it as the old school guys used to, more as a recovery aid than anything else, and then you get the gains that you wish for, or what's your take on that?
I watched one of the most recent videos. I've seen quite a good bit of knowledge on it. I think do you know when Dorian did that video with John Hodgson that were like hours long where they were in Spain? Yeah. Yes. Dorian did like really good information on it there, in my opinion.
Yes.
I'm not sure how long ago it were a couple of years ago. Boston Lloyd came about. I don't know whether you've seen Boston Lloyd. I think he really well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of says it all, really, doesn't it? But I think he was the first person to talk about it, and unfortunately, in my opinion, mislead people. Yeah. For example, saying this is just what pros do and this is what you've got to do to be a pro, it's just wrong. Like, obviously, that's what he said. That's what he's done. He's not a pro.
Yeah.
Like, not to be cynical, but the biggest factor in being a pro is mainly genetic.
Yeah.
So you can take all the performance enhancing drugs you want. You will not surpass your limitations, and to be honest, you'll probably just get ill. A common theme of what we've spoken about today: more is not always better.
No,
It's absolutely not, and it's probably never more true than when it comes to that. Absolutely, like your body can only handle so much of something. Once you reach that level, there'll be a reaction. Every action has a reaction. And if anything is going to be a bad reaction, it's from doing something like that, with performance-enhancing drugs. So,
and assuming
again,
more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I always joke, like, sort of the first time I ever asked anyone about it, they kind of said, yeah, you need this much. And that is it. Like, it is very, very basic. Again, like you said, what the guys were doing 20 years ago, there's potential. That's why they looked better, because they took a sensible amount. They weren't ill. They weren't excessive. They reached their own limitations. But they were successful. And I like to see people that still train now, and they could still compete now. Like, take Lee Priest, for example. Never been known as a big user, but always had an incredible physique. Came back in 2013 and competed, and he's still, although he's not very well now, but it was from that car accident that he's had in his neck. But other than that, he could probably drop back into competing very, very easily. Absolutely. And I think it's from not doing these excesses that aren't necessary.
Do you believe in coming off, Drew? A lot don't. So
yeah, see that's a little bit of a complicated one, because I understand why someone would see blasting and cruising as a negative, because it looks like you've never been off. But if for example someone comes off and they have zero testosterone, that can then cause health problems. For example, heart disease is linked to low testosterone. So you could argue that it's healthier for that person to do what they call a cruise. The problem you've got, again, is everyone's opinion of a cruise is different, and what some people say is a cruise is not even a cruise. So
no, I mean, it should be a real minimal amount, shouldn't it, at that point?
I mean, I think if you were going to revert to like a medical prescription of HRT, it would probably be one millitest every 10 days. That's what a cruise should be. That's probably not what people do. So it's
absolutely not.
It's a funny one that you could argue that it's healthier to cruise. You could say you need to come off because it's just what you do. I mean, I think for peace of mind, it's a good thing to be able to come off. I think you should be able to do that. Like we've mentioned before, you can't push 100% all the time. So it's sometimes beneficial to take that as a bit of time to reduce your training, reduce your food, enjoy things in life a little bit more, fully physically and mentally recover, and then get back to it after that.
You get regular bloods done and things, Drew. Do you recommend that for people and stuff?
I used to do it a lot more than I do now, because they used to have a service at Sheffield that were free of charge. For the intention of monitoring the health of people that use performance-enhancing drugs. Whereas they don't do that anymore. So it can be quite expensive to get them checked, but I think it is important to get them checked at regular intervals throughout a year, definitely.
All right then, mate. Well, listen, that's been amazing. Have you got anything you want to ask before we go? No. I think you've covered everything there, mate. Superb. Is that great information?
learning a lot. Yeah, I'm on a bit of a training course myself and a bit of a bulk.
I'm learning all at the moment. So.
Can I just take you on?
Thank you for that.
No,
so,
it's fine.
Listen, mate, I'll chat to you soon anyway, mate. We keep in touch, so I'll let you know everything going on in this crazy situation. But listen, you take care of yourself, won't you? Thanks very much. We're going to do this again, but we're going to do it with a link of people. So maybe like John, Ian. Yeah. So if you want to jump on that, mate, that'd be brilliant. We'll have you all as a bit of a link, and then that'd be great. That to do that.
Oh yeah, I'd probably get a bit starstruck, to be honest.
No, you'll be fine.
They'll be thinking who's this.
Some great stories, mate. So it'll be good.
No, I'd enjoy that. Yeah.
Take care, mate. Won't you? Thanks very much. No.